Diablo 4 is an unfinished, steaming pile of you-know-what, if you're paying attention to Metacritic anyway, which I do. And let me summarize a couple of these reviews for you just in case you aren't, get you caught up. That way you know why Diablo 4 is gearing up to be the worst game of 2023. To start off, we have someone who is complaining about the lack of endgame content. Essentially, you play the campaign, you get to level 40, and that's it. There's nothing else to do. And then the next review talks about the loot being boring and the class design being pretty unimaginative. There are a lot more user reviews on Metacritic about the game, so I'll leave a description down below the like button if you want to go check that out. But essentially, those two boil down to sort of what the problem is with the game. It's too short. There's no end game. The end game that is there is pretty boring, and just like the game design, where you're expecting to get really cool loot, it's not really there at the moment. But I'm here to tell you that this is exactly what Blizzard set out to do when they were working on Diablo 4. How do I know this? Well, I'm a software engineer. I've been working in the industry for over a decade now, and I've built a lot of unfinished products for companies so that they can go on and be successful and build the product that the people want. So stay a while and listen, and by the end of the video, you'll know exactly why Diablo 4 being the worst game of 2023 actually isn't a bad thing. To start off, this game isn't a single player game, so it's not like the campaign is the end all be all. Actually, the campaign for this style of game usually gets overlooked anyway and you skip through it. Not to spoil anything, but the campaign in the game is actually really good, and I think that helps Blizzard out quite a bit just in hooking players and getting them to want to play more into the future. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. This game, it's known as a live service game. It's kind of like a software as a service, so you can think of back in the day, you would buy software and that would be it. You would own it. But a lot of software nowadays, you have to pay month by month. That allows the company to have cash flow every month so they can keep improving on things, but it also means that you might not get the complete finished product. Live service games, in my mind, are essentially that. You are getting the base game, that's it, and they are going to continue to extend and work on it over the years to build it into what it is. Path of Exile, it didn't start off as a great game. I remember playing that a decade or more ago, and it was not good. I came back to it a couple years ago, and it was a completely different game, and that's what I'm assuming Diablo 4 will eventually turn into, is a completely different game. So I think it's important to focus on what Diablo 4 is, which is a minimum viable product, which feels weird to say considering this game has probably been in development for many years. Maybe ever since Diablo 3 came out, they kind of jumped in and started planning out what is Diablo 4 going to look like. I don't know. I don't work for Blizzard. But what you have is this really good game. Login worked as flawlessly as it could. This is probably the smoothest launch I have seen for a video game since I can remember. Probably since you've had to log in to play video games, to be honest. There weren't any server issues. The game did what it needed to do, which is log in, let people play. Yes, some people had to queue up and there were some licensing issues here and there from folks playing on PS5s, but this is really about as smooth as you could hope for such a large game release. Earlier I mentioned that the campaign was actually really good, and I think that's something that they did well here, is they focused on the campaign, they got you bought into the Diablo 4 universe. The cutscenes were great. The story was compelling. I mean, it wasn't story of the year, but I mean, when you've played other ARPGs, you kind of don't expect anything and you're going to skip the cutscenes. So people not skipping the cutscenes was actually a pretty big win here for Diablo, I think. And certainly later on in the game, it gets repetitive. That's something that they can always extend onto in the future. Again, live service game. This isn't the final product. They're going to keep building this out. This MVP also gave us a little bit of a glimpse at the game's mechanics. Level scaling is a little bit weird. I mean, it works, it's nice. They can definitely tweak it and make it better though. The loot system, I think, works pretty well. There isn't any piece of gear that I'm specifically looking for, and I think that in itself is a problem, but there is a really good base there. And I think once they work out some of the bugs, because it does seem like they have some bugs with how they are setting up the gear scaling and like resistances and stuff like that. But I think once they get a couple of patches in and a couple minor and maybe some major version updates, the loot system's going to be pretty good. I also found myself having fun with the dungeons. I'm starting to figure out which dungeons I need to run at which levels to get the most experience, because it's an ARPG. The whole point is to speed run the game and get to the last level, so then you can go figure out what loot you want to get and start min-maxing and all of that. But this might present an opportunity for them to perhaps fix the level scaling issue. So one of the issues, and I've mentioned this a bit, but basically you play the game and you never feel like you're getting any stronger because the game keeps up with your level, which isn't great for an ARPG. You do want to have a sense of progression where you can go back to a earlier part of the game and just beat everything without having any issues. And perhaps the open world could keep the level scaling, and maybe the dungeons gets tweaked so the earlier dungeons don't level scale as much, or they have an earlier cutoff point. I don't know. But again, this is all stuff that is fixable because the game is just software. And this gets into sort of the make or break part for Diablo 4, either continuing to be the worst game of 2023 and 2024 and 2030, whatever. But they need to take community feedback seriously. And they being the developers, the dev team. At first, it might seem like there's a lot of angry people that are just complaining about the game, and that might be a very bad thing. But it's something that can actually be a good thing, because the last thing you want to do is release software and then get no feedback. Because if you don't get feedback, you don't know which direction you should take the game. You can essentially think of Diablo 4 right now as an empty canvas, and now the community is basically telling them, all right, like, we want you to paint this, or we want you to paint that, or an empty highway and with a bunch of different branches off, and like which direction are they going to go? This is really Blizzard's opportunity to determine what direction to go down. If they pay attention to the community and stick with the community feedback, I think this will be a great game. You already have a very active and engaged audience, so chances are good, providing Blizzard wants to continue to make money off of the game, that we're going to see a lot of the changes that need to be made that will make this game even better into the future. But it can take months to incorporate that feedback. So we might get into Season 1 and not see any feedback from the community rolled in, and we'll see sort of like random things that the dev team figured, hey, this is probably stuff that we want to get in, this will make the game better. And then probably around Season 2, Season 3 of the game, so in about 6 to 9 months, I would assume we would start seeing a lot more of this community feedback start making its way into the game. And if we don't see that feedback, well, Blizzard isn't doing their job. They're not building the game the way that they should. And if it fails, I don't really care. The game can go crash and burn. Whatever. At this point, though, I think Blizzard set off to make the worst game of 2023. They succeeded, and they're well on their way to making the best game of 2024. Of course, there's a chance that Blizzard will do all of the wrong things and fail miserably. So if you want to see what that might look like, go check out this video next about how Agile has ruined the software industry. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. And that's it. That's the video.